Good morning and welcome to Life Coach University. I am your host, Lani Kim. I am one of the coaches here on campus. If this is your first time, welcome to our campus. And I want to encourage you to check out around the campus. There are so many coaches here with all different, not only styles, but specialties, and there are different topics going on all the time. So please check out the campus. There are some amazing, amazing coaches. If you have been here before, welcome back. We're so glad that you're here again. Today I wanted to talk about beliefs that you have about yourself. And very often these are termed limiting beliefs. But I noticed that sometimes that term feels very unfamiliar to people. And so when I'm working with clients and I ask them to write down their limiting beliefs, it feels very removed and they are not really connecting with that concept. So the way I just term it now is just thoughts that you have about yourself. That's a little more natural. And so what I ask them to do is list them. What are the top 10 thoughts that you have about yourself currently? And it's so interesting how revealing that is. And sometimes we will work in a certain area of their lives and the top 10 thoughts they have about themselves in that area specifically. So it could be, since I work with a lot of moms, as a mom, what are your top 10 thoughts about yourself? It could be obviously related to career. That's another area that we work a lot in. But the one that is my favorite is who you are as a person without these specific titles behind you, but really, who are you as a person? So if we don't know each other and we're meeting for the first time, right? What are the top 10 thoughts that you would have about yourself in that interaction, right? So usually we have some thoughts about ourselves in terms of, I hope that I come off friendly. I um, I hope that I come off intelligent, right? We have these different thoughts. So, what are the top 10 thoughts you have about yourself as a person, right? So it might not be, I hope that someone else thinks these things about me, but what do you think about yourself if you were on the other end, right? Um, or just the dialogue that goes on in your head. What do you think about yourself? When you wake up in the morning, right? What are some thoughts that you have about yourself? I think, especially for women, it's so revealing, that kind of morning routine, especially when you're getting ready, when you're putting on your outfit, if you wear makeup, when you're putting on your makeup, those moments that come to us every single day and we're preparing for the day, right? And these are our routines that we do to prepare us for the day, but often to make us look better, right? Or more professional. So while we're in this act, what thoughts come up while we're going through this? And this is where we find the daily thoughts that are both positive, but also limiting. I said, limiting beliefs is something that people don't always connect with, but those ideas that we have about ourselves that cause us to struggle, that are the ones that we use to define who we are. And again, this could be positive or it could define us in a way that keeps us contained, right? What thoughts keep you contained? So often we use these thoughts that contain us to keep us safe, right? Our primitive brain is really wanting to keep us safe. So we have thoughts that keep us contained, right? That keep us safe and help us to avoid situations that would cause us to be fearful. And that the way, that lens that we see things influences the way that we make decisions. And again, this is not so much a black or white judgment of our actions, but it is to understand where in our life are we containing ourselves to keep safe and out of fear? And is that the results from that filter that we are using to make our decisions? Is that allowing us to live our best life? Is that allowing us to step into those gifts and talents that we have? Is that allowing us to up level where we are now, to challenge ourselves, right? And that word challenge is almost the antithesis of keeping safe, right? It's not mutually exclusive in reality, but our primitive brain tends to think in black and white, in duality, right? This or that, or bifurcating things, right? This or that. So a challenge, right, to your brain is the opposite of being safe. So what are these ideas you have about yourself? And I find it fascinating because the first thing that we tend to write down is our um, relationship roles and our career roles, right? So for me, it's like mom, educator. Those are the two that come to me. And even though I'm a coach, I've been an educator for so long, it's just this comfortable old t-shirt that I put on. And I don't mean old in a bad way, but just an identity that I am so comfortable with that comes to me really, really quickly, right? Mom is something really ingrained to me too. So these are ideas I have about myself, identities I have about myself that define so much of the way that I take action, the way that I make choices that give me a specific filter and really keep me contained, right? And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but when we are, number one, looking for change, Number two, when we feel stuck, especially if we are coming out of a phase of life, right? So, again, I work with a lot of moms. So, when you might be coming out of that phase of having really, really young ones, and you are usually on hyper alert for their safety, and your time is allocated so much to matching their needs. When you're coming out of that, a lot of times there is this um, grasping, there is a unfamiliarity of what this new phase looks like. There is a shifting of identity. And that is because those ideas about yourself as a mom really dictated how you made your choices, right? So if you have kids maybe going off to some kind of school or program, right? So if they're really young, it might be a Montessori school, a preschool, a daycare, or something like that. And if they're a little bit older, maybe they're going off to TK or kindergarten, first grade, elementary school. At least that's what we call it in the States. So maybe they're like 5 and around 5 years old. So now you have all these ideas that you had about yourself that kind of kept yourself contained in a certain way. And I don't mean contained in so much a way that is stifling, but just contained in the way that we are sticking in a certain area, right? Because for most of us, if we don't contain ourselves, our thoughts are going all over the place, and then we won't make decisions, right? And then we won't take action. So we need to have a way to systematize the way we think so we can take action, right? So we create routines, we create identities, we create ideas about ourselves, right? To sort through all the information, right? So for instance, if I'm sitting at a coffee shop and people next to me are having a conversation and I can hear their conversation, maybe they're talking about um, skiing, right? I've been skiing before, but that's not something I do on a regular basis. And I have not done it for like a decade and a half, probably. So I would filter probably out that information, right? But if someone comes in and they're talking about their students, my ears are going to perk up because I'm an educator, right? Or if people say the word client, right? Being a coach, my ears perk up. So this is just how we filter information. But often that process that we've created also can make us feel stifled at times in life, right? We are ready to move on, but we haven't. And there's a process to do that. So understanding who we think we are is so important. And really examining how's that showing up in our life. And is that, I think of, those Clydesdale horses. If at least in the States, it's this kind of romantic carriage rides people take, and they'll have these beautiful Clydesdale horses. And what they'll do is often have the blinders on each side of them. And so often that's how we have been living our lives, right? I mean, I think to a certain extent, everyone lives their life like that. So where have we not been looking because we have these blinders on? We are focusing on a certain aspect of our lives, right? But maybe you're ready to move on, right? So now it's understanding what those blinders actually look like right? So is it your identity, a relationship and relational identity? So for me, I was a stay at home and work at home mom, work at home and still am for so many years that that is just identity I carry with me and I identify with and is great. But there are times in my life that I have wanted to move on, right, from this stage of life. But I hold on to that identity so tightly, it really limits where I'm looking to move on to, right? And so it's not so much, so the way I look at it as those blinders is you're really looking to take it away and not so much just turn your head. I think so often when we are holding on to these identities, and that's not a bad thing, but I mean we're holding on to them to keep us safe, right? To keep us contained rather than just to help us make decisions, because we can use that process to, or those identities to help us make decisions. And that's not a bad thing, right? But sometimes it filters out where we're willing to look, right, for that next step. So I think sometimes we're trying to like just turn our heads like this and see a little bit more rather than just like completely removing the blinders and seeing like the full scope of things. So that is often where I will find my clients, because that point after they've tried kind of like, okay, I see myself as this, let me kind of look over here, kind of look over here. Nope, don't say what I want, right? Then the frustration really builds inside of them, right? Rather than just removing the blinders and saying like, whoa, there's so much out here for us. Now I get to cherry pick what it is that I want. And partially because when you do that and you see the greater amount of choices and possibilities, the first thing is you're going to feel overwhelmed, right? All that information that your brain is processing. So that is why the blinders are so helpful. It limits our choices and makes it easier to make decisions, right? And again, that's not a bad thing. It's just, when is that serving us and when is that not serving us, right? So if we have a specific goal and vision and mission for, especially if you are in leadership and you are wanting to take your team of whatever it might be, whatever your team is looking like, what the reason you have your team, you will have that mission, that vision, and that goal. Now, that's a good thing to help you filter through your decisions, right? And so when we make that, whatever decision you may be making, the next project you want to work on, that those filters you have is going to help you stay heading in the direction that you want. But there are times that that can limit you, right? When you're ready to move on, and that phrase, the world is your oyster, right? When we have all of these um, ideas about ourselves that are keeping us contained, right? We are not opening our oyster all the way. And if you just get a little peek inside, you may not see the oyster. I mean, the pearl that might be way in the back. So, or maybe not way in the back, but further back in the oyster, right? So we need to open up our oyster. We need to remove the blinders so that we get to see the full scope of things, right? So I want to encourage you to really examine, where is this occurring? Where in your life is this showing up, right? write down those top 10 thoughts that you have about yourself. And from there, it's really a rabbit hole. And it doesn't need to be a negative experience. I actually think it's a really fun experience to look back at these different ideas we've had about ourselves, because some of them are what will take you to the next level. So if you look back, right, you might have had a funny idea about yourself, right? A concept that never took, right? But maybe that led to a different idea about yourself, right? That is showing up in your life now. You can actually trace that back, right? That's how it happened to me so many times. And in the moment, right, when I kind of wanted to move my identity, and it didn't work out. Yeah, maybe it didn't feel so great. Maybe it was embarrassing. Maybe there was some self-judgment that came with that, some shame that maybe came with that. So all these emotions that might have come out of that identity, that journey to that identity still led me to something else that has brought me to where I am now. And I'm very grateful for it, right? So when we are shifting that identity, right, we want to move on. It's great to have that, but also to have a healthy detachment, understanding that that's just a created identity. It's a story, but we are a infinite book of chapters, right? So that might be a chapter in our book, but that is not the whole story. That does not define us. So if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We'll just flip to another chapter, right? Or go to the back of our book and look at the index. There's so much to us that's beyond that one written down identity, right? So we don't want this to come when we're shifting identities. We don't want that to be a negative experience, right? In terms of a permanently negative experience. The emotion that you feel at the moment might feel a little negative, but it's to reconcile those emotions, right, that you're feeling, to get past it, right? So that you can discover something new. The way I look at it is very much like when little kids are learning to walk, right? That process is so fascinating to me. And I wish we could get into the mindset of babies who are learning to walk, right? They put so much effort and they fall so many times. They're not very good at it, right? So they fall just even trying to walk. And then when they, those first, however many months, when I call it toddling, right? Like toddler, they're not even really walking, they're toddling, right? Their sense of balance is off and they're kind of like allowing momentum to take us and take them in different directions, right? It's not a refined type of walking, right? And so when we are going through that process of stepping into an identity, if we could just have that gusto and that determination to keep going, right? Like a baby learning to walk. And they don't take it personally. They may get frustrated, right? But they never take it personally to the point where they stop trying to walk, right? I don't think I know any mom who's ever said, yeah, my kid just decided that it was so frustrating that they didn't want to walk anymore, right? They just keep on going. They figure it out, right? And so that mindset is just so fascinating. That is really, though, such a good model for us to look at when we are stepping into a new identity, right? In having the resilience to get back up when we stumble, not to take it personally into who we are, right? It's not a defining circumstance for us. It's something that happened, and we can have whatever emotion we want around it, but we don't take that personally and put it on ourselves as a type of judgment on who we are personally, right? All right, so thank you for being here with me today. And as always, we love to hear feedback. And you can give us feedback at hello@lifecoachuniversity.com. And I'd love to know, what thoughts did you up with today? And I'm so interested to know how this serves you moving down the road. And if you find yourself in maybe 3 weeks and you have a thought about what you heard today, again, we love to hear feedback from everyone who comes on campus. So we'd love to hear from you. And again, I encourage you to also look at the rest of all that we have on campus. It is amazing. There are other amazing coaches. I like coming on campus and watching the other coaches. It's always so inspiring to me. And that's really what we're looking for, right? That inspiration to get to the next stage of us, right? Well, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I will be back next week. And even then, if you have something to share about today, that would be wonderful. You can drop it in the Q&A, and I could see your comments. All right, have yourselves a good weekend and take care. Till next time.